Hey Algebra 1, and thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be looking at lesson 7.6, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. And we're going to be looking for 5 things to write down in our notes today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we want to know is how to actually factor ax squared plus bx plus c. So I'm going to get you to write down your steps first. What you want to look for first is if there is a GCF, you want to go ahead and factor out the GCF if possible. But step 2 says if there's no GCF, then you're going to try factoring by grouping. And I'm going to get into detail a little bit more about that later. But basically, you're just trying to get the same binomial, similar to the video that you saw a few lessons back. You always want to make sure that you check your work using FOIL. And then I'm going to also link this video down here at the bottom in the comment section, so you can also check out this video as well that I found would be helpful. But let's go ahead and take time now to just pause and write down what we see on the screen for now. And then once you're done, click play to see how it's done. So this first one, we notice that there is a GCF. So like I said, for step 1, it said if there is a GCF, go ahead and factor it out. With 5x squared, 15x, and 10, the GCF is 5. So I'm just going to factor out 5 from everything first. So I would get x squared plus 3x plus 2. And then I look at the polynomial to see how I can factor it. So this is kind of like factoring with the GCF plus factoring with your x squared plus bx plus c. Remember we tried to figure out, well, what has a factor? What are the factors of 2 that would also add up to 3? And those factors are 1 and 2. Because 1 plus 2 also equals 3. And we're able to simply do that because a, that first number, is equal to 1. Today we're going to be seeing some different numbers where a does not equal 1, so we're going to make sure we understand that as well. Let's go ahead and factor this section out. So I know that the factors of 1 and 2 are going to add up to 3 and also multiply to 2. So my answer would be x plus 1 and x plus 2. Notice I did, though, factor out that 5, so I'm just going to bring the 5 down. So I have the GCF, the first GCF on the outside, and then the factors of 2 that add up to 3 are on the inside, x plus 1 parentheses and x plus 2. So here's one that you're going to try. This one you can factor out the GCF. So let's go ahead and pause the video here so you can try number 2. And then once you're done, click play to check your work. Alright, so the GCF was 8 for all of these numbers. So I'm just going to factor out 8 at first. So I'm going to get x squared minus 7x plus 6. Again, I want to think of the factors that are equal to 6, but also add up to negative 7. I know that I can do 2 times 3, but 2 and 3 will give me 7, or negative 7. I know I can also do 1 times 6, and that could also give me negative 7. So I'm actually going to use 1 and 6. The only thing is I'm going to change them both to negative. Negative 1 plus negative 6 would give me a negative 7. And notice too, when c is positive, that means you're going to have the same signs. So we would have x minus 1 and x minus 6 with 8 carried down as our factor. The next thing we're going to see is when a does not equal 1. So this would be the case as well where you don't have a GCF. So I've written some reminders here on the side, things to try. And what we're going to do with that, you maybe want to copy this in your notes. I'm going to leave it on the next screen as well. But things to try first, you're going to, if there's no GCF, you're going to multiply the first and the last numbers. So that means 4 times 3. And 4 times 3 is 12. What we're going to try to do is represent 12 using the middle product or the middle term with a sum of numbers. So like, in other words, how can I make 13x using factors of 12? I know that 4 and 3 are factors, but 4 plus 3 does not equal 12. Then I keep going. I know 2 and 6 are factors. 2 and 6 does not equal 12. My other set I can use is 1 and 12, and that would equal, sorry, these should all be 13, my bad. That does equal 13, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break down 13x and make it 12x plus 1x. So now I'm going to have a new polynomial that says this, 4x squared plus 12x plus 1x plus 3. And notice I haven't changed the value of the polynomial. All I did was just make 13x be represented by something else. Now I'm going to factor by grouping, and we saw that again a few lessons ago. Noticing I can take 4x squared and 12x and factor out the 4x. That's my main goal, is to factor out this entire coefficient and variable. So if I factor out 4x, and I'm going to group these 1 and 2, that would give me x plus 3. And in the second one, 1 and 3 don't have anything else in common except for 1, so I can factor that out and get me x plus 3. Noticing again, here's my matching binomial, and that's exactly what you want when you factor by grouping. So to write your answer, we would have x plus 3, and then your other two subsets right here, 4x plus 1. And then here would be your final answer. Again, you can check this by foiling. X times 4x is 4x squared, x times 1 is 1x, 3 times 4x is 12x, and 3 times 1 is 3. I know I can add 1x and 12x together to get 13x, so I'm back where I started, just as a double check. Okay? So multiply the first and last numbers, check. Represent that product with the sum of the middle term, check. And then factor by grouping, also check. So here's one to try. Again, notice that a does not equal 1, and we do not have a GCF. Be careful, though, of your signs that you're seeing, and make sure to go ahead and try these 3 steps here. So let's go ahead and pause so you can try number 3, and once you're done, click play to check your work. All right, so what I did first is just multiplied 3 times 2, and I got 6. So what I'm going to have to do here is see what products or what factors of 6 can equal -7. And right off the bat, I know -1 plus -6, those are factors of 6, will give me a -7. So I'm going to use that to my advantage and break down and make it so I can see a -1 and a -6 here. So I'm going to have 3x squared minus 6x minus 1x plus 2. Again, I did not change the value of the polynomial. I basically just split -7x to make -6 and -1. Now I'm ready to factor by grouping. The first group will be the 3x squared minus 6x, and the second group would be the -1x and positive 2. I'm going to go ahead and factor out 3x from the first group to get x minus 2. And then from the second group, I'm going to factor out -1, which would make it x minus 2 as well. And I could have actually grouped this right here, that negative right there. Now that I notice I have a matching binomial, and if you didn't have the matching binomial, you would want to maybe go back and try to figure out, well, where did I go wrong? So that I do have that matching binomial. Now I can put everything together. X minus 2 would be one binomial, and then 3x minus 1 would be the other. Again, I can check by FOIL, and that should give me back to my original polynomial. Here's another one to try. Again, factoring out the polynomial, multiply the first and the last numbers, make the middle term be a sum of what you got for the first and last numbers, and then factor by grouping. So let's go ahead and pause here to try number 4 and click play when you're ready to check. Okay, so for this one I did 2 times -7 and got -14. So I'm just thinking to myself, what factors of -14 can make -5? Well, I've actually just used them, 2 and -7, because 2 plus -7 gives me that -5, which is the middle term right here. So I'm going to go ahead and break down -5x to be 2 and -7x. So 2x squared plus 2x minus 7x minus 7. This one, you may have to factor out more than one thing. So let's go ahead and see what we can get from here. So I'm going to group these first two terms because they have 2x in common. So I'm going to get x plus 1, which means I also want to factor out over here, so I could also get x plus 1. So with this one, to make my x positive, I'm going to factor out a negative 7, so I can get x plus 1 as well. Now I'm ready to combine, so I'm going to have x plus 1 as one binomial, and then 2x minus 7 as the second. Okay? The last one, be careful, we're also being careful with this one because now a is equal to a negative number, so again, just be cautious there. Let's go ahead and pause number 5, try it, and then click play to check your work. Alright, so first thing I did was multiply negative 4 times 5, and that gives me negative 20. So I'm trying to figure out what factors of 20 or negative 20 can also give me my negative 8 in the middle. What those factors I chose were 2 and negative 10. Both of those add together to make negative 8, and they also can be multiplied together to get negative 8, or sorry, negative 20. So I'm going to go and split negative 8 in half and make that 2 and negative 10x. So I'll have negative 4x squared plus 2x minus 10x plus 5. And then with this one, you do want to make sure that you choose a factor that will maybe factor out everything. So I'm going to go ahead and try factoring out 2x from the first one. Excuse me, I want to maybe go ahead and factor out a negative 2 so I can make a positive. So I'm going to factor out negative 2x from the first group. So I have negative 2x on the outside, and then I will have x minus 1 as one of my answers. Over here, I notice I have 10x and 5. Those can be factored out with the 5. In order to maybe show the same binomial, I'm going to see what happens when I factor out a negative 5. So then I'll have 2x minus 1. These binomials are not matching up, so what I probably did not factor correctly. So what I'm going to do is actually go back and maybe switch around and regroup to make negative 10x be with 4x. So what I did is I'm going to go ahead and group the negative 10x with the 4x. I'm going to factor out a negative 2x because that's my GCF of negative 4x squared and negative 10x. So I'm going to get x plus, or sorry, 2x plus 5. And with this last one, I notice that I can factor out a positive 1 and still get 2x plus 5. So that is what I was looking for, my matching binomials. Now I can write my answer as 2x plus 5 and negative 2x plus 1. I can also write my answer as maybe something like this, 2x plus 5, and then, or have that switched around, sorry. If I had 2x plus 5 here, and then I've also seen this, where the negative's on the outside and you have 2x minus 1, that would be the same thing as negative 2x plus 1, just with the negative with the 2x. So either one of these would actually work. Okay? That's going to conclude our notes for today. Thanks so much for tuning in for lesson 7.6, and we'll catch you next time.